Killed 4 cops in an 88. All of them have families.
How much do you know about Miguel?
Enough.
Welcome to a special conversation with Screen Rant. My name is Adam Bernard. Thank you so much for joining me today. My guest plays Detective Bobby Reyes on Law & Order Organized Crime, now in its 5th season and streaming on Peacock. Rick Gonzalez, thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. It's officially your 3rd season on Organized Crime, and Reyes has had some pretty major moments through the series and also lots of growth. What would you say is the most impactful moment of growth for Reyes in the past 3 seasons?
That's a really good question. I think when he lost his foster brothers was a big moment for him. Having to confront his past at that time was a big deal. Traumatic for him, and I think having closure on the past was important for him to move forward. I think also him losing his marriage is pretty up there for him. But yeah, I mean, I think, in terms of growth and what he had to deal with, I think dealing with the foster brothers and confronting his foster dad, the person who took care of him was monumental in his life.
Now, Reyes is an undercover master, and he still hasn't been foiled yet. I know there was a close call this season, but luckily that cover hasn't been blown yet. Yeah. In terms of the character itself, what do you think makes Reyes so good at his job, especially with being undercover?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe the trauma he's been through. I think what I loved about the character is the idea that he's been through so much pain and so much trauma, so much, struggle, that it allowed him to sort of feel sort of like a daredevil, like someone just like willing to go to the limits, even as a father, which is insane, like even as a father and a husband, but like there's this like disregard to just go so hard for the case. And doing undercover work is really dangerous. And I don't know. It was just something about like this idea of like him having to just lose himself in that world that, I don't know. For me, it just felt like, wow, like this guy is really, just in a really dark space, and allows himself to just lose himself there. And maybe just for a little bit, like it allows him to alleviate all that trauma and all that pain. He can escape it all for a second, and the work allows him to not really think about himself and what he's going through, and allows him to just be singular in going after information and sort of connecting with people, because you have to be when you're undercover. You can't think of anything else but getting that information. So, and I think that in a way, maybe it saves his life sometimes, because he's not so, the depression doesn't really sink in.
Now, you've spoken about working with Chris Maloney. You've spoken highly about working with him in past interviews. And this season, it seems like you two have been partnered up pretty closely. Has that made you two closer behind the scenes?
I've always admired Chris and respected him. I do love when I get to work with him in scenes and stuff. It allows me to see his process. Chris is a trained actor. Studied with Sanford Meisner, and he's just a really good actor at listening. And I just for me, I'm always willing to learn and to grow. And I definitely treat the show as like an acting class, and I'm just there, just ready to just throw myself in there, and so working with him is sort of like always coming to class and ready to just, like, all right, what are we doing today? And he's very much a captain. He cares about writing and tone and how we're going to block these scenes. And, so I just kind of like allow him to like, push things forward, and I just kind of watch. And then, so it becomes a dance at the end of the day. But yeah, I mean, I think, what was nice is like this episode that's about to air, we felt, as characters, we felt a little connected more. There was this idea of like, okay, we got to do this together, and maybe we got to get our hands dirty together, you know, and I like that because I think that's what Reyes is there for, you know, to do that with him. So, yeah, I mean, I love working with Chris, and I just, you know, I think I feel as though we do trust each other.
Now, Jet abruptly leaves the Bureau at the beginning of the season after a pretty wild and intense beginning for season 5. Now, Reyes and Jet obviously have a history together. Do you think that's going to impact Reyes' character arc through this season, transitioning to not only working without her, but also potentially her not in his life?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, he is someone who's dealt with a lot of loss in his life. And this is just, you know, another straw to add to the pile. You know, it's just, you know, she brought a sort of safety net to him, you know, this situationship that they had. And now that he doesn't have that comfortability, that safety net with her, you know, there's more loss, you know. So I just think, like, you know, I see Reyes as someone who's going to always, like, push down these emotions and these things that he should be dealing with, but he doesn't, you know. So the interesting thing is that it makes him a better cop in some ways, because he does rise to the occasion a lot. So it'd be interesting to see if we could see how he handles that stuff, you know, at home, or what does that mean for him, you know, emotionally. So, yeah, well, I mean, it's always going to be there. You know, I think, you know, those emotions are always there.
Now, Jason Patric has just appeared for the first time on episode 6 as Detective Tim McKenna. What was it like working with Jason Patric, and how do you think his appearance has changed the dynamic of the show?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, first of all, working with him was awesome. I think he's a fantastic actor. I was always a huge fan of his work. And from the moment he showed up on set, he changed the energy of the scenes, the intensity of Tim McKenna and what he means as a friend to Stabler and to this case was immediately, like, we felt that impact. We felt that energy, you know, and as actors, we came together and we allowed him the space to create this energy. Yeah, and I had a great time working with him. And I will say that this won't be the last time that we see McKenna and Reyes sort of confront each other. So yeah, it's gonna be great. Tim McKenna sort of is indicative of the energy of our show for this season. You know, this episode, you know, sort of like encapsulates, like, the energy of our move to Peacock and, like, us moving that in that direction and sort of even getting more darker and more edgier in our tone. So, yeah.
Well, don't forget, season 5 is out now. Episodes drop every Thursday on Peacock exclusively. Law and Order, Organized Crime. Rick Gonzalez, thank you so much for your time, sir. An absolute pleasure.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Should we call anyone?
No.